You're listening to QCast, presented by Qcella Media. Please consider giving generously to Qcella's nonprofit mission. To find out more about our mission and to make a donation, visit our website at qcast.qcella.org. Your tax-deductible donation will help us continue bringing you quality podcasts just like this one.
I may be bruised, but I'm not broken. You can't take away my soul. You tried to tell me I don't count, but I know in my heart that's not true. So you cannot take me down that path. I'll make it without you. I may be bruised, but I'm not broken. My life counts for something, and you wake up and I'll be gone. You'll know that you were wrong. Welcome to my show, Shades of Gender. I'm your host, Terry Ryan. Thank you for listening. You know, we are a show all about gender identity, whether it is self-identifying as a transgender, dual gender, cross-dresser, non-binary gender. Anyone who identifies with a alternative gender, we are here for you. And every week we talk to people from the community about their stories and what generally is happening out in the gender identity movement. So welcome to our show. This is I'm very happy to be back. We've taken a hiatus after the COVID-19 shutdown, and we're back on air and starting to talk to some people again in the community. And today I'm very, very happy to have Sarah J., who is calling in from the San Diego area. We're just kind of inching back to actually meeting face-to-face as we're practicing social distancing. So she's not in the studio, but we do have her on the phone, and we're very excited to have her on air. So hi, Sarah.
Hi, Terry. How are you?
I am terrific. I am really, I know you and I have spoken off and on over really, I think, the past couple months or maybe even earlier than that. But, you know, for our audience, I always start out the show with, so especially since it's radio, to talk about where my guest identifies on the gender scale. And before we go into your story and where you are first and where you came from, etc., how do you identify in the gender scale?
Terry, I'm a transgender woman, fairly newly minted since 2016. Okay. I live my life full time as a woman.
And I didn't realize it was really your coming out as such was 2016, so it is relatively new for you, isn't it?
Yes, just 4 years. I mean, I have been gendered fluid for many years before that, but only since 2016 did I decide that this is really my time and I really need to do this because things were not working for me emotionally as I was. So
you bring up something that's very interesting for you, and what was working for you is you actually then, when you say you're gender fluid, you actually had been gender fluid. I would say probably I would ask for many years. I mean, did you as a child? Let's back up here because I see that, you know, the number of people I've talked to over the course of 8 years on this topic start early on doing something. They're either dressing in alternative gender clothes, they're either feeling like they're in the wrong body, they are showing early signs, many of them when they're 5 or 6 years old. What about yourself? Where did your journey start?
It didn't really start that early. When I was in my teens, I was always the pretty boy at school, and I always hung with the girls. But back in the late 70s, there wasn't really the terminologies that we have today. Oh,
Yes,
we didn't really know.
And then the only thing probably that was out there was, I mean, did anyone ever accuse you of being gay, or were you just like were you a feminine, or were you still masculine, just a good-looking guy that the girls liked?
Yeah, I think everybody pretty much thought I was gay. And when I first brought my first girlfriend home, my parents heaved a great sigh of relief.
I bet. And you're from the UK, right? Or you're originally from the UK,
yes.
Right? So, what part of the UK are you from, and what was your background like? Were you like living in the city, or were you out in the country, or?
We lived in a small town in the north of England. This was in the late 60s, and the place was really utilitarian, kind of small town in the north of England. It was not London where things were happening. So we were really not exposed to anything very out of the ordinary. I didn't consider myself to be anything different. I just thought everybody was picking on me. But when I look back on it, I suddenly realized what was going on. I was a girl in a boy's body, and I didn't know it. Right.
Well, we have the terminology now to say that, the younger transgender people have the liberty now in the terminology to say, oh yes, I'm a girl in a boy's body. But I'm with you on that. I mean, we didn't have we wouldn't even have thought to say that in many cases. I mean, I know some people have said, I felt like I was a girl, but not all of us, had that, even the terminology to use. So like you were just being you, and like you said, you're being picked on by the boys are picking on you. Did you think they were just jealous of you? And
it was a mixture of both. They were jealous because I hung out with the girls and I always had girlfriends.
Yeah, I bet.
And of course I wasn't playing their games, so it kind of, they pick on people who are different when you're that age.
Right. And did you have brothers and sisters? You said you're in a kind of a rural town. I mean, a small town. Did you have brothers and sisters on either side of you, age-wise?
I have one sister who's older than me and quite a little bit older than me, so we didn't really
cross over too much, right?
Interact very much because the age difference was too much. But to answer your question, originally, I first really came to grips with it. I got married at the age of 20, which I'll tell anyone is way too young.
Yeah.
And my wife kind of encouraged me to indulge my cross-dressing. And really, I think she thought at that point, well, he'll get it out of his system and then it'll go away. And
how did that come up? Were you kind of already, where were you living, by the way, when you got married? Did you move to a larger town where there might have been more gender fluid type people around you in London?
We moved to a larger country. We moved to South Africa.
Oh,
and
wow!
Mainly to get away from our parents. And we were both people that didn't fit in with northern conservative society. So we were both a little bit of rebels. So when we went to South Africa, we felt that no one was looking over our shoulder, and we could indulge ourselves as we wanted. And it was really very innocent. Our lovemaking included some cross-dressing because my wife kind of enjoyed that.
So it's kind of the two of you against the world, kind of living out yourselves, your true selves, and united, right? So anything kind of went with you two.
Yes, and it really was only in the bedroom at that point.
Uh-huh.
We didn't really do anything else outside. South Africa is just as conservative as everywhere else.
Right.
But it did give us both. It did give us both the outlet to be ourselves for a little while.
Right. Right. That's very interesting. And were you, you weren't in school, you were working. Did you both work together, or how did you
Yes.
support yourself?
No, I'm an engineer, and I was working as an engineer, building my career. And of course, that's one of the things that takes precedent over you being different, because if you're in any engineering corporate structure, you have to fit in.
Well, of course you do. What kind of engineer were you then? Were you a structural engineer, electrical?
I'm a mechanical engineer specializing in water treatment.
Okay.
So we were building drinking water facilities all over Africa.
Gotcha. So that was really, so you actually went to South Africa with the job then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you were married. Was your wife a professional also?
She was actually in retail, and she eventually became a marketing manager in retail, which was really not who she thought she was, but that's where she ended up. But we did divorce in 1986 after 12 years of marriage.
So you did make it 12 years, and I take it no children?
I have a daughter, Layla.
Ah.
She is still living in South Africa, in Cape Town. And she and I have had a somewhat checkered career history over the years, but since I came out as Sarah, she has been absolutely wonderful. We are closer now than we've ever been.
Well, there you go. So you had more conflict before you came out as Sarah than after. Sounds like.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's very interesting. So how did you, it sounds like you'd been gender fluid probably in your dress and your action for a while. So she probably, there was probably a certain hipness probably to yourself with her. I don't know. But how did you, as you made a decision yourself that, that you really were trans woman, how did you present this to her, or was it over time, or how did that all occur?
Both my wife and my daughter both knew something was different about me, and it was kind of talked about a little bit, but not too much. And then I was really estranged from them for around 10 years, and I really didn't quite know what to do. I remember thinking I have to tell them because I feel like I'm living a lie here. And eventually I told my wife, and she said, well, we kind of knew, but we just didn't know, if you know what that means. And my daughter, I sent her a very long email, and I was so scared. I was so scared that she would be disappointed in me. I was so scared that she would turn against me and would never want to see me again.
Sarah, you actually presented, your authentic self as a trans woman via email, and try to lay out some of your history and.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she said to me, we had been talking, and she said to me, "Do you have a Facebook page?" And I said, "Yes, I do. But if I give you it, I'm going to have to do some explaining." And she said, "Okay, well, explain away." And that was where the email came.
Oh, that's what happened. Interesting. So she would have met your Facebook page, obviously, is Sarah J.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, how old is your daughter now?
My daughter is 35.
35. And when was the last time you saw her? Has she been out? Have you had the opportunity to get together?
I haven't seen her for about 5 years, just through circumstance. But we are in touch with each other almost every other day. Social media is wonderful for that.
It really is. Yeah, it is. It's wonderful. So she's following you through your life, through your social media, and obviously your own discussions with each other. So she's certainly on board. And how about your ex-wife? Do you have a relationship with her?
We have a cordial friendship from a distance. I think all exes should be 5,000 miles away.
Right. I love that. Right. With your daughter Layla's close to your wife, then, right? They stayed in South Africa. They never left.
Well, they were. They were in South Africa until 2 years ago, in fact. And then my ex-wife moved to the UK, back to the UK. So now we're kind of completely split between three countries.
Wow, you sure are. You need to do a reunion.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I really think that would
be
be
wonderful.
wonderful.
This year.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously with what's happening with our COVID-19, it's made it very difficult for anyone to do anything. But I think that would be, as soon as you feel comfortable doing that, I think that would be wonderful. So you are you've been in the States for how long?
I've been here for 20 years.
20 years. And then you took a job, obviously, as an engineer. You took a job in the States and were doing that, or did you change careers when you came over to the States?
Yes, I did. Basically, I took a job when I first came in here because you kind of need to do those things, and then I started my own business, and I have had my own business.
Yeah, and you've got a really interesting business. And so let's talk about that. I know you're outside of San Diego, and for those, we will post some pictures of Sarah on social media. But Sarah is a athletic, blonde, looks like is involved in telling her about her business. Sailor, looks like she belongs on the beach. Attractive, certainly attractive woman. And I just and you can just see when she's out on her boat how happy she is. So why don't you tell our audience, what the business you started, and then how you started as a man. Arguably that you've always been a trans woman, but for the outside world, it was a male. So, what is that business?
I don't know if your listeners know, but in San Diego, many people keep their boats here, even though they live out of state. Many live in Arizona, many live in Northern California or Nevada. And when their boats are here, they want them to be looked after. So basically, they employ me to make sure everything is working okay. They have no problems when they come down, and the boats are clean, the boats are stocked, the boats are ready to go. And the number one priority is the bar must be stocked.
What you're saying is that really it's obviously San Diego's got a lot of marinos, and a lot of people dock their boats there. I mean, it's a beautiful area down there. So, and people, when they go, they want it stocked, they want it ready to go. So you have like a concierge service for the people that for their boats, right? A boat concierge service to stock up their boats and make sure it's ready to go, right? Clean and ready to go.
That is correct. Yeah, and mainly from boats around 40 feet up to about 80 feet.
So these are kind of like yachts. I mean, bigger boats, sailboats. So you do all that for people. So when they come, they're all set to go and they can enjoy their time.
Yes, exactly. Otherwise, they spend that whole weekend
you do.
getting the boat ready.
I hated boating. I tell you, my ex owned a boat when I met him, and he used to do the Mackinac and was an avid sailor. And I like boats. I like the water. I love actually a smaller boat where I can put my feet in the water when you curve it just right, and you got it at that right tilt, which I think is better in a 28 maybe, and maybe an Endeavor. But on the bigger boats, they just don't turn like that because they have such a heavy hull. But I remember thinking, is sailing just cleaning boats? I mean, there's so much cleaning, right?
Yes, I mean, I don't do the cleaning. I have people.
You hire people for that, but I mean, it's a lot of, and then putting ice in it. I mean, and this is not, when you put it like in Chicago, you have to, of course, take it out of Lake Michigan, otherwise it would freeze. So you got to take it downriver, and it's a short season. In San Diego, they keep their boats out there year round.
Yes, they do.
Okay. So, you don't at least have to take it downriver and then winterize it and clean out the head and all those things that go with it. I mean, I thought it's just a lot of stuff. So I'm sure it's keeping you busy. So how did you get involved in that business? Were you just into boats yourself and thought it would be a good place to be?
Yes, I've pretty much always been involved in boats. And when I first came to America, I thought, what can I do that is my hobby and is my profession, which is an engineer? And I thought, well, I can maintain and I can troubleshoot mechanical things on boats. And so I started hanging around the marinas and got a reputation for, the British guy. The British guy knows how to fix this stuff. So that's really.
So you notice that the British guy, they're having a hard time, and they say, "Get the British guy. He's got to be here." So you really got it by people getting to know that you were handy. You're like the handyman of the marina, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you started to do that, and then you thought, wait a minute. You probably saw how people hated, coming to a boat that wasn't prepped, and decided that probably got, a few clients and just went from there? Did they come to you, or did you come to them with the concept?
Yeah, they call me before they're coming down and say we're coming down, or we're having friends come down, or we're having a corporate event on the boat.
Right.
And they give me a couple of days' notice and get it done. It all started because I used to get many calls on a Friday evening at 10 o'clock in the evening saying, oh, we've just arrived from Phoenix, or we've just arrived from San Francisco, and this doesn't work. The lights won't go on. This doesn't work. The boat's full of water or something.
Right.
And I started to tell people, well, if you would have called me a day before, I could have gone there and fixed it for you, and checked everything was okay. And that's really how the business grew.
Right. You're saying let's be proactive, right, rather than reactive.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And then when one person has that service, then they talk about it to the next person on the dock, and they talk about it, and you just go down the dock, and you have many clients on the same dock.
Right.
Because they all want the same.
They want the same because they all are having the same.
I have a really good reputation with my clients, and they like me being on the boats. They basically say to me, treat the boat as if it was yours. Whatever you see that needs doing, get it done. We don't want to have issues because that spoils our time here. People come to San Diego because they want to have a vacation away from home. And if they have a boat here, they want it on their boat.
Right. So this begs to the next question. So you've had this business for a while, probably a number of years, 14, 15 years?
Yes. And I'm still working. I haven't retired.
Oh, no. You have the business, right. You're right, not have. So here's the question. Here you go. You're basically, they know you as a male. And then for 2016, when you really are really coming out and saying, I'm just, this femme part of me is me as a transgender woman. How did you inform your clientele, and what was the reaction?
It's been a little bit hit and miss. What I really did when I kind of came out to myself in 2016, when I went to work, I kind of wore androgynous clothing. So I would wear a polo shirt and shorts or jeans, which any woman would wear, and didn't look too out of place on a man. I used to tone down the makeup. My hair wasn't as long as it is today then. So I kind of went along and I just became more feminine, even though I was still presenting as kind of somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. And most of my clients would kind of look at me, and I know they kind of look, and some of the ones I'd had for a longer time would say to me, do you have another name? And I'd say, well, actually, yes, I do. And that's really how it happened.
Oh, so
and then I would give them my female name. I always wanted to let them interact at their own pace. I didn't want to just kind of give it to them and say, okay, this is it. Last week I was this person. This week I'm Sarah.
Right.
I think that's a bit too much of a shock for most people.
Right. Well, did you just go from your male name to you're female, or it's just like call me whatever you want to call me? I mean, how do you feel about right? Give them the option, if they've known you as, I don't even know your male name, but let's say they knew you as Scott. So if your name was Scott before, they don't necessarily you have to call you, because it gets awkward. I actually have a friend who's, well, I don't know. I mean, I'd say dual gender, but probably more beneath it all trans. But still, I know as one male name, and then but really I know that she really wants to be the woman name. So what I end up doing is calling her both names, because I keep slipping back to the old name.
I get the same.
You know what I mean, right? So right. So it's like, so it does become kind of, so that's more comfortable, because it was really, my first association was just really under the male. So that's like, it's all good for you. That's not a problem. And did you lose any clients because of this? I mean, did you find, or did you pretty much keep it?
No, I didn't. I didn't lose any clients.
Right. That's cool.
And pretty much as you described, if they wanted to call me by my male name, I'd say, yeah, that's fine. I prefer it if you call me by my female name, but it's not a big issue. And most people, because they've already known you by your male name, it's ingrained in their brain, and they really have a hard time.
Right. They do have
to switch.
Right.
So they call me both now. They call me both.
I find it most comfortable with my friend that I was more associated with the male, and to me it's just one person, but it's easier because then I don't feel awkward trying to decide am I going to offend them by not using the proper name, and if I come out with the male name, is that so? I think you're great. You're letting your clients just letting them off the hook, really, because they're just. They just want to identify, and talk to you and use your name and not have to worry about it every time they talk to you. Or do they slip up?
You can't be too upset about these things. I mean, people have known you for years, and they're not going to change. Even if they want to, they're not going to change.
Well, that goes to another topic. So, because truly later in life, like you said, you were on the gender fluid scale for many years, and then really said, I really, this is part of as our society got more vocabulary and there were more people out. I'm sure you probably started thinking, this is really who I am. Or at least, I always say that your femme side just basically needed to be out. What happened like with your friends? Were your parents, are they around or are they gone? I mean, what are some of the kind of the reveals that you had to do besides your wife and your daughter?
Yeah, not too much really. My father died in 2001, and my mother had Alzheimer's, so I didn't think it was really appropriate to confuse her even more. So we've kind of just left her kind of out of the loop, quite honestly. She doesn't really know me anymore.
Oh, so she's still around then, you said, right? But she's had Alzheimer's for years, so she
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The only real negative was my sister, and my sister wouldn't discuss it. I tried to open the subject with her, and she didn't want to know. And she basically said, well, you'll always be my brother. And I said, well, yes, I will. But sometimes I'll be more pretty than others. So.
Oh, interesting. She's been the only negative reaction I've had. Everybody else has said, oh, new, or, we are not, I have not surprised anybody. Right.
Everybody said, yeah, we knew. Yeah, we knew something.
Something was different, but they probably thought you were more gay than that you were trans. That's what I'm getting to, because it was more.
I had those two.
Yeah.
I had those two choices. I could either be an effeminate man,
right,
or I could be a transgender woman. It's really
right. But they knew there was a
choices
femininity to your gender that was, again, most people, even when you're growing up, gay was the gay population was, starting to come out, and they were, there's more the term that people could identify with. No one even, well, quite frankly, trans is really just a new term. I mean, we know that there was transsexual and there was transvestite. And, then transgender, it was supposed to be an umbrella for the whole shades of gender, but now it's like, I don't think it really is. I think it's really more, self-identifying as being, the opposite of the gender that you were born in, certainly. But, again, this is why I do this show. I do this show because it's if you notice, it's not shades of transgender, it's shades of gender, because I really believe in these shades, and I don't think, I think there's gender, male, female, combination, dual gender, where you're one person, and it's not as hard line as people want to make it, to put someone in a box, right? Yeah.
I actually don't think there are any hard lines. I think it's a very, very fluid
process
spectrum of people. If they're truly honest with themselves, and many people are not, because it takes a lot of courage to look inside yourself and say, I'm not quite like everyone else, because everybody wants to be like everyone else. So to be different is hard. To be different, you need to be strong. And to belong to any minority group, you need to be stronger than most.
Yes, you do. I think that's extremely astute, and I can see your strength. I mean, you have it together, I think, on many levels. I mean, it sounds like you've had a successful career. You've found a new career that you could be in a beautiful town like San Diego that with your passion with boats, and figure out how to turn that into a business. You've got self-acceptance from your clients, and your daughter and your ex, and I'm sure. Now, how did this affect some of your friendships with men, or did you have a lot of women friends already?
I had quite a number of women friends, although I have many more now. And a couple of them that I was very close to have kind of become a bit more distant, and I was a little bit sad about that. But I asked them the question, and I said, what is it? What's changed? And they said, we feel like we've lost someone. We feel like we've lost the man that we loved, and the man that we liked to go out with. And it's not quite the same for them, I don't think, anymore.
What do you say when an old friend says that to you?
I think I just basically leave them to think about it. I try and keep those friendships going, even though they may be on a slightly different level, because I think it takes time for people. And the thing that people tell you when you are transitioning is that you think you are transitioning, everything is changing for you. Well, it's changing for everybody else around you too. And you have to give people time. You have to give them time to get used to that idea.
Well, that is very true. I mean, if it's taken you and some people, like I said, it takes a lifetime. It's not it's not like a light switch that turns off and on. You need to have the maturity and the life experience and the self-awareness and the intellect and all those things to kind of evolve to who you are. So then when you ask one of your friends to say they knew you, I'm just going to use the name because I don't know your male name, but let's say Scott, and you say you've lived as Scott, and whatever you were, quirky or more feminine or whatever you were, you still were Scott. And then one day you said, no, call me Sarah, I'm a trans woman. It's like, it does make sense. that they're going to be like, like give me a minute to give me a beat to try to internalize this. And I do see some people on my show and some of the people that I've over the years that have transitioned that expect like an immediate acceptance on the spot. If you love me, especially in a marriage, you would be there for me. This is who I am, etc. And it's really unrealistic and causes a lot of conflict, and I think not particularly fair to those in those relationships because, they've changed their persona on you, right? Changed the kind of the game, the rules.
And the interesting part of that is that usually their concern is not for you; their concern is for themselves, and their concern is that, well, if I'm seen out with you, what will my friends think? What will the neighbors think? It's kind of like turning the friendship back on themselves. They're worried for themselves. They're not really worried for you.
No, you're right. They probably didn't even ask. I think in many cases they don't ask you, well, what was that journey like? How did it feel? How are you doing? It's more of how is that going to affect me? And right, and you've taken away from me that male friendship. You've taken, what will people think about us out? It's unfortunate, but we seem to be in a society where we think only of ourselves often, and it's hard. I don't know, and even in old friendships, the immediate is not like, gee, poor you, how was that journey? It's like, well, you ripped me off, like you took away my friend. I used to say with bigender or dual gender, or really to transition into the three in the relationship. When my ex was a cross-dresser, he didn't even say what he was, but he certainly liked to cross-dress, and I would say he's gender fluid. But I remember when he was in as a female came out, and I used to say it was the other woman in the relationship. There were three of us there, in the dual gender role, because it's like there's a different persona here, and where did my husband go? So, it does play with your mind on some things, but, you are absolutely right. I don't think people realize how, and that this wasn't a journey that you just made up one night and decided, gee, I think I'm going to, this took years of, and not really having role models for many years, or terminology, or society support. You're like a success story. You're leading the pack in terms of having someone who's been able to be who they are in their authentic self, have a job that they enjoy, and have friends and not have to be in total isolation. I just had a woman on my show who runs the transgender health and wellness center out here near Palm Springs, and she was talking about, as I call it, more of her street level of people that are coming in, and how many people are in the sex trade, and I know that there's a part of the population that's there, but a lot of the trans women that I've met and bigender really have, how can I say, they're taking a different journey. It's like they haven't allowed, they've done different businesses and have had levels of success. And that's where all these terminology gets rather confusing, right?
I think it's good to say at this point, when I decided to transition, my friends who I told, and there weren't very many, all said to me, are you sure you want to do this? Because you are running the risk of growing old with no friends, no relationship, no one to love you, and being alone. And exactly the opposite has happened.
Yeah. What a great...
Whether that was because I was forewarned, or whether it's just because I'm just naturally out there, I don't know.
Well, maybe it's because you're living your authentic self. And I've always said, if you're comfortable with you, people are comfortable with you. If you're comfortable with who you are,
Yes.
and you can't please everyone. I mean, we're always going to have people, no matter who you are, that don't like us. I certainly probably as many people that don't like me as do. But if you're authentic and you're being who you are, then the people can choose whether they want to be with you or not. And maybe your friends that gave you that advice gave that to you because of their lack of experience and their own prejudices themselves of what that would be like. And maybe people they've known, maybe what they've read. But, I truly, I wrote an article some time back about walking for the trans, and really anyone dealing with gender issues, walking the walk and walk the walk and people will follow. And I think what I love about your message today, and I'm these are it makes me so happy to talk to people, Sarah, like yourself, on a story of authenticity, having the courage, the fortitude, the commitment, and the self-awareness to be able to walk forward and walk your walk into an unknown territory and have a balanced life, which is what we're all looking for.
Yes.
So I'm so proud of it. I mean, I'm sure it's great. And so, tell me about the down in the community in San Diego. It's a bigger city. How is the, do you get out with the girls? What kind of, how are you, do you socialize? I'm sure your world's not just with trans women. I'm sure it's with other women. I'm sure it's with some of your friends that are male, some of your boating people. But when you do get together, with some of the trans women, are they local, or do you have a group that you get together? Or?
When I first came out in 2016, I managed to meet a group of 5 transgender women. They were originally with Facebook friends, and they were all here in San Diego. And I invited them out for my birthday dinner. And we went out and we met face to face for the very first time. And they have remained friends. We don't see each other quite as much now for various other unrelated reasons. But they were my first group of girls that I enjoyed socializing with.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And there's a funny thing that happens when you take this journey. When you first transition, I mean, I meet lots of girls who are too scared to leave the house. But when you first transition and you venture outside, and outside is a big deal for a lot of girls. You go to somewhere, you go to a bar, or you go to a club, or you go shopping or whatever, and you pray that no one will notice you. You don't want to talk to anyone. You don't want to interact with anyone because you're scared. You are scared of the reaction that you might get. And that for me went on for about 3 months. And then one day I thought, hey, I'm an okay person. I want to talk to someone. I want to interact with people.
Yeah, you don't want to hide.
And it's really that No, it's really that impetus that makes you meet people, because we are social animals.
That's right.
And
that's right.
I met my group of 5, and we called ourselves the Wrecking Crew.
I thought I saw that on your social media. Hey, you know what? I'm going to have to wrap it up, and I think it's a great way to wrap it up is, it's a journey. I'm so glad you had great experience right off the bat with your trans sisters and the Wrecking Crew, and I look forward to having you back on the show soon. And stay safe, take care of yourself, stay healthy, and thank you for being on the show. And I'm just going to...
Thank you so much, Terry.
You betcha. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
All
Bye-bye.
right, you bet. And everyone out there, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm certainly humbled to be part of the conversation on gender identity and invite you to keep listening. So join us again for our next show on KGay 106.5.